The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
So hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Living United in Interesting Times. This is actually the first time that we're filming this particular show. We used to call this show Living United with Nashua Business. And I've decided that these are just interesting times that we're living in. And whether it be the pandemic or the response to the pandemic, or just the overall climate that we live in terms of politics or society, there are just so many things we can talk about in our community, and I wanted to open up the conversation a little bit. So today, we're really excited to have, for our first episode, our friends from St. Joseph Hospital. And St. Joseph Hospital has been one of United Way's great partners in the community and one of our community's biggest allies throughout the pandemic, but also for many, many years prior to that. So I'd like to welcome Kevin Flynn and Tara Collins to our show today. I'll let you guys introduce yourselves with your titles and what you do, and even if your title isn't what you do or make it up, it doesn't really matter to me. But I'd like to welcome you guys both to our show, and thank you for being on today with us.
Happy to be here.
Absolutely. So Kevin, I think maybe we'll start with you.
Okay.
Because before we were even on the air,
right,
you asked me if I knew the story of your birth story, not your personal birth story. I don't want to. Let's not get into that. I don't know where. You never know where that's going to go. But the story of St. Joseph's Hospital. You know where we came from. What are our roots? And I think these are interesting times to talk about exactly that. Maybe you could share that with us a little bit.
Sure. So go to the late 1870s, or approximately there. So business is booming in Nashua, the textile business specifically. Today's kids would say popping. It was very busy.
Yeah, it was just
They wouldn't.
popping. I don't know. No, they probably wouldn't. You're right about that.
And so they needed more workers to get the work done. So underemployed or unemployed French Canadians from Quebec heard about this, and they started streaming into Nashua in numbers large enough to be called a caravan. And like any new people in an established society, they weren't necessarily welcomed. So you know how new people in any situation can be easily despised because they're different.
They're different.
And so
they're not us.
Right.
Until they are.
Right. So they spoke a different language, and they were proudly and profoundly Catholic, having large families, 7, 8, 9 kids. And they clung to their French culture, as they should. And so they really had a hard time. In every aspect of life, they had a hard time, I think, fitting in. And one day, a man showed up for a visit. His name was Henri Millet. And Henri Millet was born, raised, educated in Quebec. And he got here, and he got a lay of the land, and he just didn't like what he saw. He didn't like the way his brother and sister, French Canadians, were being treated. So he didn't go back. He said, I'm going to stick around, and I'm going to make a difference. And he did. So the first thing he did is he pooled the resources and the money and the support, and he built a church, which is still on Hollis. St. Aloysius, it's known more affectionately as St. Louis now.
St. Louis Church, right, absolutely.
Right. And up until only a few years ago, there were still parts of the Mass said in French. So now they're all in English and Spanish. So he built the church, and then he built a school so that the children could be educated in their native language. So he called on Holy Cross nuns out of France, because their charism is education. And they came over, and so he had to build a convent so that the nuns had a place to stay. Then he built an orphanage so that any of the French children who had lost their parents either to industrial accidents or illness would still be embraced and raised and comforted by that French community. But the thing that I think he felt most strongly was that if you got sick and you didn't speak English, not a good place to be. Right. And so he, again, pooled the resources and got support, and he built St. Joseph Hospital and the School of Nursing. And it opened on May 1st, so we're coming up this Saturday, be 113 years. We're working our way through our second pandemic. But in the Catholic tradition, May 1st is the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. So that's how the name came along. So, and fittingly, interpreter services, which is a pretty robust service that we offer, is under mission integration now. But he made such a difference for the French in Nashua that when he passed in 1917, I don't know if you've heard this story before, every store, every school, every mill closed for his funeral.
I had not heard that.
That's what a big difference one person made. So it's a great story about immigrants because our hospital was founded by immigrants. And I just think in this day and age, that's a happy story. Like you said, interesting times.
It is interesting times, and it's always been interesting times. And, you know, as you said, working through your second pandemic, you know, there aren't that many people that can still remember the 1917 Spanish flu, right?
Right.
But absolutely, you guys were there as well for that. So thank you for sharing that. That was really very, very interesting. Now, you mentioned mission integration, and you both work in this department called mission or mission integration. What exactly does that mean?
So every Catholic hospital has a mission department. Almost always was a woman who was a sister with whatever orders. 90+%, probably close to 100% of every Catholic hospital in this country was founded by a woman.
Really?
In a religious order.
St. Joe's isn't an exception in the sense that we weren't founded, but we were opened and run initially. Monsignor Millet called down the Grey Nuns to open and run the hospital. So we when they opened their doors on May 1st, that's who they were run by, was the Grey Nuns of Montreal, who eventually in the 1930s became the sole owners then of the hospital as well. So we have that connection. So basically women were
So the joke is when he finally got the doors open, he needed women to get it done, right?
Yeah. We got the job done, but...
Well, this does not surprise me. This does not surprise me.
But yeah, so we have... sorry, I wanted you to finish on your...
Well, you did say that you're going to interrupt Kevin
I did.
at random times.
I felt like I needed to real quick right there because I hadn't done it
I
yet
think
because
you
he
did
was doing such a good job.
No, you did a good job.
So I had to get that in there real quick.
No, so what? I lost my train of thought.
You were talking about the mission departments for hospitals.
So a couple of things happened in the 1960s. President Kennedy started the Peace Corps. So men and women could commit 2 years of their lives to go and do something in the world for the greater good, but not have to make a lifetime commitment of chastity and charity, poverty, and obedience and all of that. They could go and really do good work. The other thing is more and more colleges in the U.S. opened their doors to women that had previously been like, the all-male.
Right.
And so more women started going to college and pursuing careers outside of the home. So when that happened, the number of women entering religious life dropped substantially. So that's why there's less and less. I think it's been 20 years since we had Grey Nuns that were on the staff.
Yeah, 16 years. Yeah.
So then they call on what we're known as lay people because we're not a priest, a brother, or sister. And so our job is to, if I'm being half cute, I would say preserve, protect, and defend our Catholic identity, but to do it in a way that welcomes all people from every walk of life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really is very much how I identify what St. Joseph's does in our community. Is it's really not from a religious perspective, it's from a community's perspective.
Absolutely.
And I've seen that in our partnerships, whether it be, helping out with our volunteer Greater Nashua portal or helping out with our events or, just a couple of weeks ago, we had a Day of Caring event, and how many volunteers did we have from St. Joseph Hospital come, and including your president, John,
Yes, absolutely.
and helping us to package up food and just get it done in the community, which is really amazing.
Well, John's got a real presence in the community. So.
He does. He's on my board, which is great.
Nice.
So,
I think that's always been a sole focus too, and something I've always been proud of at the hospital. And if you talk to any employee who works there, they'll tell you that too. It's just different, but the community has always been our sole focus. We do drives throughout the year for the community. We do. We're involved in several community partnerships, and like Kevin said, we have interpreter services. We have a cultural diversity committee. We're really committed to, you know, it's funny because I think sometimes people see Catholic healthcare and they feel like, oh, well, that's what our focus is Catholic. Well, part of our Catholic identity is making sure that everyone is cared for, is
Right.
loved, is taken care of, and is accepted. So it's we are really involved in that, and we really live, you know, what we speak. So
Yeah, absolutely.
that's important to
And we
us.
see that. And so one of the things I wanted to mention is, because this is a video which is this is probably going to be around for posterity, because once put it on the internet, right, you're never going to get rid of it, right? So, but I do think a couple of years down the road we're going to be looking at this, and we are in interesting times. And one of the things I want to tell our audience that's watching today is, none of us is wearing a face mask, and I know that I'm going to get all kinds of feedback on social media. How can you do? And we're all vaccinated,
We're
right?
all vaccinated.
And so this is something which I want everybody to know who's watching this.
Yeah.
We're still a couple feet apart from each other,
We
but
are.
Right.
but as a
And
society,
we
we're
agreed
starting
upon
to.
this beforehand, so anybody who
We did.
might
and-
have some issues with that, this was something we discussed beforehand. We all knew that we were vaccinated.
Right.
and we also did
we
all the screening protocols.
We did
and
screening. I
everything.
had my temp taken.
We'll also get,
well-
I'm still also still get some feedback,
all right.
but that's okay. But it is interesting times because it is a pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
and so during these times, even in spite of that, you've at the hospital been able to launch some incredible new initiatives. And one of those that I want to make sure that we talk a little bit about is the new Senior Behavioral Health Unit.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if one of you could talk a little bit, because it's unique and it's new,
it
and
really
it's
is.
really needed in our
So,
community.
but just by way of comparison, so I'm a Philly transplant, and Pennsylvania has a fairly robust state hospital system. And one of the things I noticed when I got here was this thing called, when I would look at the house supervisor's census in the morning, there was this thing called boarders in the ED. And I asked about it, and a lot of it was all related to mental health.
Yeah.
And they were waiting for a bed somewhere, and it just seemed like there was a very small number of beds available. It took a long time. Sometimes people would be in the ED for days or even weeks, and I had never experienced.
Well, I pictured that same scenario, and you picture also people in gurneys out in
Yeah.
the hallway, and you never know where. So having a unit that actually addresses, especially with seniors,
Yeah.
is I think really important. How is this working?
So you mentioned John, and I have to say,
Yeah.
John rallied the right people. We got Horizon Health, who has a great experience. This is like all they do is behavioral health units.
Okay.
And I want to say, it seemed to me like that unit came together in less than 6 months. And
It
I
did,
know
actually.
in other systems
Yeah.
I've worked with, that would have been like a 2-year project. And so it's a 24-bed unit. And, we all know people who are older, who either through illness or the death of a spouse or a partner go through depression or need medication with some type of chronic disease. And at some point, they, like all of us, they hit a low. And maybe they're by themselves.
They
and
might,
that's-
like unintentionally be a danger to themselves, a danger to others.
Sure.
Meaning it's not of conscious thought, it's not premeditated, but that danger is still there. They need a secure area.
So this unit was designed for them. So it's a 24-bed unit, and Horizon Health has the medical director there, and they brought in an clinical operations director. And I think today we tied the highest census 12, so we're 50% capacity as of today. But John opened this. I want to say it opened like right around New Year's,
It
either
opened
right
in
before
December. It was
December.
before the first of the
What
year.
would you say is the average length of stay for one of
11,
your?
11 days.
Okay, so
it's
it's really
more than
It's
more than
short
in a
twice.
crisis,
Right.
get stabilized,
Yeah.
kind of figure out the situation,
Yeah.
and figure out probably where next
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a gentleman who was up there who had a really great connection with one of our chaplains. Our chaplain was visiting him each day. And he had been in crisis mode. And so that was a place for him to be where they could stabilize him. He was safe. But he came back afterwards, a week or two after he was discharged, and came back to see the chaplain and was doing well and just sort of wanted to say thank you. And so even in the midst of kind of his crisis, he still remembered that part of it and was able to come back. And I thought that was neat for the chaplain as well, to be able to see that person, a week or two later doing so much better, and kind of close that that loop with them.
That's really great. So I'm glad that we talked a little bit about this.
Yeah, because it really met a need in the community. So it was a great response under John's leadership, I think.
The other thing I wanted to absolutely make sure we mention is something that's been going on for a couple of years, which is mobile health.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you guys have established a unit, which is I call it the van.
Don't call it the van.
I call it the
That's
van.
the naughty word.
I know,
Mike.
I'm sorry.
We
but-
get in trouble. Like there, I swear, there's like
Yeah.
a change jar somewhere that we're supposed to put like a quarter
Okay,
in every
well,
time we say.
what if I
van.
call it the RV? Is that also bad?
The
or?
clinic?
We,
The clinic.
we affectionately refer to them as a bus. I mean, it's a huge Fleetwood.
huge.
So
It's
Yeah.
a huge, yeah.
like a tour bus.
It's like a tour bus. Well, is that better than a van?
Oh, but
Well,
I was just
van
for
to me just-
size wise, I
it's-
want people to
van just-
understand.
Doctors, it's like a
Van doesn't-
doctor's office on wheels.
On wheels, yeah.
because van just doesn't suggest that
It doesn't,
you're
no.
like
We'd probably
anything
rather the
with
bus.
medical care.
Absolutely. So you've got
So-
this large
Yes.
thing on wheels,
Mobile
Yeah.
clinic.
Yeah.
Mobile clinic.
a large
on wheel- yeah,
mobile clinic on
Yeah.
wheels, which includes not just medical but also dental.
It does.
And how are you employing that or starting to deploy that in the community?
So a lot's happened. So this was moved under mission. So John and I got here in 18. We both got here in the summer. And John said to me, this really fits more with mission in the community. And so we hired a clinical nurse manager, and then we got a medical director who actually is the same guy that runs, is the director for our emergency department. And worked on a couple of
And
things.
he's not the driver too, right?
No, no. Actually, you know where we get our drivers? Retired firefighters.
Oh,
Because
no kidding.
because they
Drive
have they have CDL licenses.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I was going to say
They're
maybe
used to drive
bus
those
drivers,
big,
right? Same.
Yeah.
The same.
those
And
big fire
the
trucks.
newest driver actually has this passion for oh God, what the thing that goes up in the air with the camera on it?
Oh,
drones.
drones.
Drones, yeah, thank you. So he's brought his drone out, and then like the next day we get these pictures that look like crane shots when I was a kid.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
That's cool.
it is. So we're partnering with parishes, like Cafe Agape was this program with. So that's kind of transitioned them.
That's Main Street Methodist.
Right, but I think it's transitioned under St. Pat's. Because Main Street's not open yet.
So it's possible. And St. Pat's has also got stuff going on with the soup kitchen. So
Yep.
that would make sense.
That's
I don't
true,
know
yeah.
that, but yeah, that makes sense.
So we've got that relationship,
Yeah.
and so what we're trying, we've hit the Palm Square in town. That's an over 55 community, and the goal is to be out 5 or 6 days a week. And we're getting volunteers from our employed physician, like I call them faculty. I know it's not
Yeah.
academic medicine, but those folks volunteer like 4 hours in their free time
Yeah,
to
of
come
course.
out. And so we're looking to hire somebody either more per diems that this is all they do. I just got a beautiful email last week from a woman she put retired in quotes, and I thought, okay, that means you're not really retired. And I called her up, and she wanted to come out and like act as a per diem and sign up for shifts whenever she's free.
For dental as well?
No, that's one area where we haven't been able to connect. Maybe
The dental is
Yeah.
the mobile clinic is set up to offer dental services
Right.
on it. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah, we should talk about that because I know
yeah.
that the Dental Connection
Right.
has had really good luck with getting support from the dental community. Obviously, that's what
Yeah.
they do. They're really well
Right.
connected, and maybe that relationship is something that
Absolutely.
you can
Yeah.
leverage and tap
Yeah.
into.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk
Because
about
there's
that.
a need for there's a need for a place like the Dental Connection, which is a fully robust dental clinic in
Yeah.
one
Right.
place, but there's also this tremendous need to take the medicine out into the community.
Yeah, and I think you really touched on something. So folks have anxiety for many reasons about they don't want to hear bad news. They know something's wrong. They don't have money. They don't want to, just going to a hospital or going to a physician's office is just an anxiety produced. They catastrophize in their minds.
Yeah.
And so part of I think the genius of having like a parish nurse, and when I say parish, I mean synagogue, it can be mosque, it can be any church, is the idea of someone from that faith community who's a nurse. It might start out with blood pressure or it could start out with check for diabetes, that kind of stuff. And the next thing you know, they create a relationship and we show up.
Right.
And it's a warm introduction and a hand that you're familiar with that says, come on here, let's
Yeah.
talk to a doctor. And you're seeing a doctor in a setting in which you're already comfortable.
Sort of that white coat fear is, but I think on top of that, to elaborate on that, people who are, receiving medical care can create anxiety to begin with, and then you add in the pandemic that we're in,
Right.
and that that's been a struggle that we have had in healthcare for this past year, has been people putting off preventative care. Preventative care is life-saving care because
Yeah.
it prevents not all the bad stuff, but it's there for a reason, and that's because you find the bigger things quicker and sooner, and they're much more manageable. Well, people were foregoing that because they're afraid to come into the hospital during a pandemic, and
I think you're absolutely right. That
Understandably,
whole
but-
ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. I think we're going to be seeing some fallout for that for quite some time to come.
And yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and we are already seeing some of that. But even with it's not just adults, it's unfortunately with children too. There's
Sure.
been a lot of child checks that are postponed, and the elderly, they might be afraid to come in. So it's really hitting every single population, but that preventative care is vital. And
Yeah.
so I think it's probably hopeful that this can help with a little bit of that
Yeah.
too. Maybe people who are afraid to come in, or people who have lost their health insurance through all the things going on, things like that. I know that our program manager has been in touch with the schools as well to see where we might be able to integrate it into the school systems as well, and be able to
Definitely.
help with the kids.
And we
Boys
do.
and Girls Club.
We have we've created this contractual, but it's more of a relationship with the city for both the schools to go out and have like a doctor's office there for the school nurses.
Yeah.
And then also immunizations. We've been doing that twice a week.
Now, have you been doing any of the COVID vaccinations out of the clinic? Because I know you're doing some stuff in the community with vaccinations.
Yeah, actually, that has happened a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah, most of the immunizations with the city, though, were for like flu.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think, they've mostly been the flu. I think were the flu vaccines, making sure that we can get it out there. Again, to anybody who either doesn't have access or feels nervous about coming in, things like that.
Well, I think things like some of these more routine vaccinations are also things that have kind of fallen by the wayside.
Right.
You start to
Correct.
see advertising in the mainstream media about don't forget this shot or that
Yes.
shot because we've been so focused on COVID.
Correct.
Um,
and I think
and
that happened with flu too, so it was important for us to get that.
So
to
we've
get
got
that out
about
there.
maybe 4.5 minutes left, and so I said time flies, right?
Yeah, it does.
I did want
does.
to make sure we mentioned. So you also you even have a food pantry,
We do.
and that is
and I'm
something
gonna
I
give
wanted to ask about.
100% credit. That's Tara's baby.
That's my baby. Literally my baby.
Well, let's hear about your
The
baby
food
then.
pantry was born November 8th, 2012. And I know that because it was born 6 months after my daughter was. So when I tell you literally my baby, that pantry is,
Yeah,
what do you want to know, Mike?
and it's mostly for the support of your families, your
is.
employee
Our
family
food
community.
pantry
And that
is,
includes volunteers and the school
Yeah,
of
of
nursing,
course.
the school of
Yeah.
nursing students too, because some of them are in nursing school, but they've got some tough,
100%.
they've got
Yeah,
tough thing going on.
there's a lot of
at home.
students that are low income
Absolutely.
and
Yeah,
just
and-
struggling.
specifically, I mean, I'm in graduate school. I know it is not cheap. It is not easy. But nursing school, that's not something you can take online. It's not something, I mean, maybe
That's
some
true.
of your classes, but not the majority of them. You have clinicals. So it is a really, really rigorous program, and you are giving up a lot of your available working hours to be in that program. So they're certainly not, in that financial situation by choice. It's because that's the situation
Right.
that school can put you in. So yes, it is available to all of our employees, our volunteers, and our School of Nursing students. During the pandemic, we'd really never advertised the pantry before because
Right,
it
of
was, we
course.
considered it kind of private because we weren't open to the public. So
Sure.
I almost felt a level of guilt to that, saying, hey, listen, who wants to
Well,
who wants to support our pantry? But I'm really, it's one good thing that came out of the pandemic was that we were able to, the community support throughout this pandemic was absolutely amazing. And we were able to filter a lot of that community support through the pantry. We were able to open
Right.
every week. I know United Way twice now in the past year has been an incredible support to us. We got our new freezer, and then
Sure.
recently we got approved for one of the grants. So very excited about that. But yeah, it's we're very proud of it. It's what it does is it provides a space for our employees, our volunteer school nursing student. A lot of times with that population, a working population or a school population,
Yeah.
they have the feeling that they shouldn't access those services.
Right.
That they're working, so I shouldn't have to. But that's not true. And so we just provide that safe space for them to be able to.
Well, one of the things
get
that
what
I
they
think
need.
is really exciting that's going on, and this is right now kind of going through the whole legislative process up in Concord, what I would call the sausage making process,
Mm-hmm.
is there's legislation to open up that schools can start to convert some of their surplus food over into what I would call, because I'm old, a TV dinner.
Yes.
And
Isn't Nashua Soup Kitchen doing that? They gave us some. They gave
Nashua
us some
Soup Kitchen
recently.
does that, and we do that a lot.
Yes.
But this would open it up actually to school districts around the
Wow.
state to do that as well, with because
Okay.
they have a lot of food that comes
Yeah,
in and
absolutely.
becomes surplus, and they have commercial kitchens where they can turn this around.
Yes.
So they're looking at maybe doing that, and maybe we can try and what we're trying
That
to do
is
is see how
super
can we
exciting.
connect pantries to
Yeah.
this new resource.
I mean, 95% of our visitors have children
Yeah.
under the age of 18. So
Yeah.
things like that are absolutely
and
a
it's
huge
it's
need.
handled so discreetly. It's by appointment,
As-
and so when folks come over, it's not like they're running into other people because
Right.
people have pride, and it's hard for them to. And
Pride is usually the biggest
We see that in
barrier.
our pop-up food pantries. People
Absolutely.
are like, yeah, they kind of, you can tell
Right.
they don't want. It's like, no, you're not taking away
Yeah.
from somebody else.
Correct.
You know,
That's the biggest thing we have to
it's
explain.
what do you
Yeah.
need? Let's figure that
Yeah.
out.
Yep. And I tell everybody that.
So-
I say, no, we're not taking away from anybody. There's enough to go around. So
Absolutely.
You're not taking away from anyone. You take what you need,
So
great.
we're out of time.
I can't believe
so
it. That was
Tara-
crazy.
And Captain,
Yes.
I have gifts for you.
whoa,
Wow.
Because nobody comes on the Mike show without getting a gift, and nobody ever gets a very good one. So
and we're number one.
Yeah,
you guys
we're
are
number
yes,
one.
yes.
Okay,
So
all right.
yes, as number one, you get a United Way Live United face
Very
mask.
nice.
Wow.
Very nice.
Because who doesn't need a face mask?
I'm gonna rock
right?
this, okay? Just
Now
so you know.
I will tell you, these are not KN95s. The hospital won't approve them.
It's okay.
But
No,
you
no.
wear 'em out and
We
about.
don't wear 95s unless you're clinical, okay?
That's
we
good.
Yeah, we're good, but we do
So-
have to wear the hospital mask. I can put this, I'll tell you what, I can put this right over my surgical mask, okay? They do allow us to do
Fabulous.
that.
And that's it. We're out of time.
Wow,
So
great.
thank you guys for coming
Yeah,
on.
thank
Really
you,
great.
Mike.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.